Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. You are watching, hopefully from our YouTube channel, outlawradio.live, or maybe you're watching from our Facebook page. Either way, we want to welcome you. What these videos are, it's the recording, the video recording of the Outlaw Radio Show. It's broadcast across America on various radio stations. And it's also podcasted. So what you're watching is the recording of the Outlaw Radio Show that then becomes the podcast. Today is going to be a really fun day. A lot of you, if you're around Calvary 316, you know Justin. We're not going to use Justin's last name because of, you'll figure that out. You'll understand a little bit more of that as we get into it. But Justin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for letting me come.
I got to say, I love the hat.
Oh, yeah. I got it. Got the hat and then ordered a patch for it. So
just explain to those that can see you what the logo is on the top.
The logo is the Arabic letter, essentially, for noon, which ISIS was basically spray painting or painting on the houses of Christians. It stands for Nazrini.
It's actually the Arabic N, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind of
noon. Yeah. So the N, yeah.
So they were, ISIS was spray painting that, indicating where Christians were.
Meaning Nazrini, or Jesus of Nazareth.
The followers of Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah,
so it's actually become adopted. Christians have adopted the symbol.
Yeah. I mean, it's the fish.
It's like a new version of the Ichthus.
So
yes. We have, excuse me, we have at Calvary 316. We did a T-shirt of it. But that hat, right when you walked in, I was like, that is sweet. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So we're going to do, Justin's going to be on the show. We're going to talk about all kinds of things today. China, we're going to talk about archaeology. We're going to talk a little bit about you, because you're an interesting character.
I don't know about that, but I'll make some stuff up.
If you are a member of Calvary 316 and you've seen Justin around, hopefully you'll be able to learn a little bit more about Justin from today's episode. And so, man, brother, I appreciate you being with me. And the first block here is going to be 14 minutes. And so, like we talked about beforehand, I know you don't have the ability to keep time. But if you're watching and you see me go like this, I'm letting Justin know.
It's because I had to leave my phone in the car.
That's right, because they're listening. We'll get to that. So we're gonna start the show at this point. The music is rolling. And so I'm gonna kind of give us a countdown, and then we're gonna go. First block's 14 minutes. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams, and I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. Wherever you're listening or however you're listening, we want to welcome you to the show. Our heart, our purpose, our desire is to talk about relevant topics in an honest and genuine way. And in doing so, hopefully break down a misconception that the world has of Christians, that we are kind of prudes, that we don't have, that we don't think for ourselves, that we're monolithic in thought, that we aren't real people, that have real conversations about real topics, real things. I am joined today by a good friend of mine. His name is Justin. Justin, to the large radio audience, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Let me set a little bit of some context to how I know Justin. Justin has been going to our church for about how long?
Probably since 2013 or 14.
Now you
off and on.
You grew up in a Calvary Chapel church, correct?
Yeah.
And the reason I have Justin on the show today is I love interesting people. I love interesting people with interesting stories that do interesting things. And of all of the people that I know, Justin is very interesting. As a matter of fact, we were sitting a few weeks ago after church, poolside, talking about all kinds of things. And it was like, you need to be on the Outlaw Radio Show.
When you actually do it, it's not that interesting.
Well, let's start this way. You have a degree.
Yeah, bachelor's of anthropology and a master's of archaeology.
Okay, that's just a little bit of a tease. Just off the top of your head, can you list out the countries, all of the countries that you've been in.
It's really not that much. I did a little app. It's like 7% of the world.
7%. Well, it's a big world.
It is. All of Southeast Asia. So, and then almost all of East Asia. I haven't gone to Japan yet.
So when you say that for the audience that might not be,
Okay.
might not have done really well in
Yeah.
geography, what countries would that include? Aside from, let's say
see.
China, that's the easy
So
one.
yeah, China, been to Mongolia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Brunei, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia.
So you've been to all of those countries.
Yeah, all of those. Yeah,
Now, aside from that, you've also been in the Middle East.
correct. Yeah.
What countries have you been there?
I lived in Israel. That's where I got my master's degree, and then that's really the only country in the Middle East I've actually been to.
Okay.
I travel whenever I get a chance to travel. I go to a different country. So
Now, how old are you?
I'll be 35 this year.
So you'll be 35
Yeah.
this year. You have a degree in anthropology,
Correct. Yeah.
and you're quite well traveled.
Getting there.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
But anytime you have a vacation, you travel someplace new.
I try to. Yeah.
Again, I'm setting this up because this guy has story after story after story.
Well, I'm a fatty, so I like eat food, and the best way, one of the main reasons why I travel is because I'm a foodie too. I like trying new foods and seeing new cultures and stuff. So it's
We're unscripted here, so let's just go there for just a moment. What is the worst meal you've ever had? Like the one dish that you've had that you're like, I'm never eating that again.
It's hard to say. So in Asia, there's this fruit called durian. It smells like a septic tank. And it also tastes like one, I would say.
I've never smelt the inside of a septic tank, nor have I have I
if
eaten
you
one.
can
but
imagine, like that's there when you
it sounds terrible.
Well, let's just put it when you travel. Oftentimes, like the hotels and stuff will put up signs saying no durian.
So they ban it,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's that bad.
it's that bad.
So wait a second. So there are hotels that will ban this, and there's signs warning people about this.
Right.
So in like, why in the world did you decide I'm going to try this anyway?
I was kind of tricked into it. It was at a school that I was teaching at, and they made a milkshake out of it, and they didn't tell me it was in there. And
How quickly until you realized what it was?
the milkshake covered up the smell, so it like
It wasn't as potent, but the first taste,
right.
It was,
It was apparent that's exactly what I was having was durian.
okay, what is and again for an American audience here that has not traveled, I don't think I've been to as many states in America as you've been to countries in the world. So we have a different context. But what one meal or dish that maybe Americans are not familiar with that they have to try, they've got to find, that you're just in love with? Because again, the people that are watching the video, and again, if you're listening either on the radio or our podcast, we do have a YouTube channel. The show is recorded. It's videotaped. And so you can see Justin when he says he's a bit of a foodie, a fatty. He's a large man. We'll put it that way. And so, you always, anytime we go to a restaurant, I always want to see the chef, because if the chef is super skinny, I'm worried. But if the chef looks like Justin, the man knows food.
That's right.
So what's the one dish that you got to find?
I would say either bún cha from Vietnam. Everybody talks about pho. Bún cha is where it's at, though.
Now, what is that?
It's hard to describe. It's like Vietnamese sausage, and it's got these rice noodles, and it's just delicious.
It's hard to paint the picture with words.
Yeah. Or maybe koshery from Egypt. That's very good too.
Very good.
Yeah.
So food. Now you, of all of the different types of food, you know what? You actually have an idea of a restaurant that I think is brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Share that really quick.
Well, I'm an idea man. It'll never happen if it's me.
But someone out there's listening,
right.
and they're going to hear this idea.
And you can have it free. Just let me come eat.
let me eat for free.
So I want to get like a warehouse and maybe paint some roads on the ground and like get little do street food from every country. They have like their little street stalls or whatever that a lot of countries have.
Like a big warehouse with streets, and then you just partner with people and do different types of cuisine.
Yeah, they come in, because a lot of places, like we think of food trucks here, whereas most street food comes in like maybe a hot dog cart that you would see in like New York City. Like most street food is kind of like that. So just have a bunch of those from all over the world and just street food from around the world.
I'll tell you, the one person that's going to hear this, not only is he already salivating as he's listening, but he's going to be all over that idea, is Josh Brown, our producer.
Oh, okay.
Because Josh is also, he's lost some weight. I'll give him credit. He's gotten healthier, but Josh is a foodie, big time.
Most street food is probably healthier than a lot of stuff we eat here.
Yeah, I guarantee you when Josh edits this, I'm going to get a text message from him, be like, that is a brilliant idea. We need to do that. Let's get to some, again, more interesting things, but things that are kind of relevant. And again, if you're listening, Justin's a very interesting guy and has some very cool stories. So you were an archaeologist.
Yeah.
And you got your degree in Israel.
Correct.
And you have, as a result, some very interesting insights into certain digs, what we're discovering. I want to get to that, but not yet.
Okay.
What I want to talk about first and foremost is, so you had this degree, but you ended up for a few years doing what with your life?
Well, so after Israel, I came back, was looking for a job. A few months went by, couldn't find anything. So I actually ended up about a month or two before getting my job that I just came from. I had some friends I went to school with in Israel. They got married and they moved to China, and they kept trying to get me to go teach English there. And I thought about it before in the past, but I was like, nah, I'm an archaeologist. I need to try. I spent 10 years of my life learning how to dig a hole. I need to try and find a job.
I need to go dig some holes.
I need to dig holes, right? And so I actually got some contract archaeology work, which is most times what people do with field work and stuff. It's a lot of temporary jobs, stay in a hotel. Not my ideal position within the archaeology world, but I got a job. So finally, after a year, I was just like, fine, I'll go to China. And signed a 2-year contract, and so 5 years later, I was still there.
So you moved to China to teach English.
Correct.
Now I want to add a little caveat. If you're listening, you might be thinking, "Give me the guy's last name," because I've only referred to him as Justin. You might go, "Well, Justin who?" Well, there's a reason that we're withholding Justin's last name, and we're not writing it down. And there's a reason that his cell phone isn't actually in the studio with us. It's been left in the vehicle, and it's all related to China, and we're gonna get to that. So you moved to China to teach English. While you were there, talk about the church and just kind of the ministry opportunities that presented themselves.
So everywhere I go, I try and connect with the church. I think that's probably one of the most important things to do, especially when you travel. Even when I go short term, like little trips, 2 or 3 days here or there. If it falls on like a Sunday or something, I'll research a church, maybe go visit a Bible study or something, just see what the family's doing
That's awesome.
in different places. You meet some interesting people, make good connections. So I got connected with some of the people.
In China,
yeah, mostly foreigners, and that tends to happen, just got involved with doing some stuff that was probably frowned upon. Well, it is frowned upon there.
Now that's a good lead in. So in America, we hear so much about China in the news, and it often ends up being filtered through a partisan perspective. You have the Democratic Party that seems to be at least a little bit more lenient, tolerant, accepting of China. Good grief, you have the NBA, and we had this whole debacle last fall about saying some things that offended China, realizing it was a huge marketplace, pulling back some things. We had a general manager get fired as a result of it. So people got to walk on eggshells a little bit with China. And then you have like the Republican end of it, especially with the coronavirus and its origins in China. There's been kind of a geopolitical shifting towards our perspective on China. And you're hearing, for example, about the Uyghurs and a million Muslims that are in pseudo concentration camps or enforced labor camps, that maybe your Nike shoes are being made by internment camps. We hear about the restrictions of religious freedoms, about the restrictions of free speech. Hong Kong has been on the news. My point, and kind of this lead in, and we're going to run against a break and kind of pick this up when we come back, is there's a lot we hear about China, and we kind of step back, and I'll admit I'm one of these people where it's like it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. The surveillance state, what communism looks like, it can't be that bad. But you, from personal experience, living there for 5 years, and then also being part of the church in China, you can say that it's worse than what we even know. Is that a correct assessment? And again, we're going against a hard break.
It's pretty. I would probably say it's typical for communists.
It's
countries.
typical for communists. Now,
Yeah.
If you're listening and you're intrigued, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with the Outlaw Radio Show. So we're going to kind of continue that thought right there.
Okay.
This block is 12 minutes.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show, one of the most important aspects of our show, of our ministry, and that's really what we see this as, a ministry, is our desire to connect with you, the listening audience. If you have any questions about something that might be said on the show, maybe something you disagree with, we want to hear from you. If you want to challenge an opinion you don't like, if you want to share testimony about how something we were talking about really struck a chord and ministered to your heart, if you want to submit topics, things that you would love to hear my opinion on or discuss, literally there's nothing off limits. There are several ways that you can reach me. You can reach the Outlaw Radio Show first. And again, all of this you can find on our website, which is outlawradio.org. We're on Twitter. Our handle is at @radio_outlaw. We're also on Facebook. You can join our Facebook community, facebook.com/theradiooutlaw. And then our email address, which is probably the easiest, quickest way to submit topics and questions and feedback, info@outlawradio.org. Again, info@outlawradio.org. If you're like, bro, I'm driving in the car, I can't write any of that down, not to worry. Outlaw Radio, that's the show you're listening to, .org, outlawradio.org. You can find all of this information. Getting back to what we were discussing, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Justin. Justin, welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show.
Glad to be here.
We left things off with me kind of setting the stage for China. And you commented that this is kind of typical for a Chinese country. Can you just elaborate on what you mean?
Well, I mean, it's typical for a communist country.
Communist.
Yeah. In the aspect of the state becomes the religion. So the state is the be all. Like if anything above the state is an enemy of the state.
When you say the state becomes a religion, expound on that.
Government, and nothing is better than the government. For example, here in China, or today's China, they're currently in the legal churches, the ones that they've said, okay, you can be Christians here, but you have to follow these rules. They allow them. They operate under the name. The English name is the Three Self Church. There's a couple of others, but they're basically making them take down pictures of Jesus and crosses, and then they're putting up pictures of Mao Zedong and Xi Jinping, and making them sing Communist Party songs in the church
instead of worship songs.
In addition to the worship songs. And so the state, the government becomes the religion.
Maybe let's take a step back, because you alluded to this. Explain how the church works within China. You mentioned the approved church. Kind of give us an overview of the different manifestations and really kind of who's allowed and who isn't.
Okay, yeah. So at the beginning, they banned all religion. And then they, just like capitalism, they've said, oh, we need this. That's why China is the second largest economy now, is because they're not a pure communist economy. They're a highly controlled capitalistic. I forgot the name of it, but they did the same thing with religion. It's highly controlled religion.
That's interesting.
And so you have the legal churches. So you have, I think it's 2 different Protestant church groups and 1 Catholic group, where the Pope does not choose the priest there. The
party does.
The party does. And so you have that aspect of things, and then you have the underground church.
Pause. So the state church is just that. It is the state church.
Right. And oftentimes what's funny is that there's a lot of nepotism in the Communist Party. And so they'll just appoint someone's son who's a loser, essentially. They don't do anything. They say, you're no good at anything, so you're going to be a pastor of a church.
And so all over China, the most visual presentation of Christianity is really just Christianity in name only. It's
kind of.
It's a twisting of what it is.
You do have some good 3 self-church, good state-run churches. It's a very mixed bag of the state legal churches.
So in the communist revolution, I mean, it manifested purely as communism. And I remember even within our church, Christianity was banned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the great story, Hudson Taylor, and you had a whole bunch of missionaries from Britain that were all over China. And then with the revolution, they were all expelled, and people worried that Christianity had disappeared from China because Mao and the early manifestations of communism, it was banned. It was just like with the USSR. You could not be a Christian. What's fascinating is that parallel, because China wisely, and this is something that Cuba didn't do, they recognized that capitalism was a better system for economic growth and purposes. And so they remained communist, but then pulled certain components of capitalism that they could control to their own self-end. But they did the same thing with religion. Why do you think the Communist Party reached the conclusion? Because it's self-evident why they incorporated certain aspects of capitalism for economic reasons. Why do you think they felt it necessary to incorporate elements of Christianity and religion?
Because when you outlaw stuff, people do it. I mean, Americans are well known for doing the exact opposite of what our government tells us to do. And people are just naturally rebellious. So at first they're really hard-lined and fully against it, and then you kind of start easing it back in, and it allows you to control people better, because then you say, oh, for you, we'll start allowing, we'll allow this. You just need to follow this little rule, this little thing.
It's interesting. One of the policies, just studying Chinese Christian history, is, there was a significant Christian population in China before the revolution. When the revolution happened, Western perspective is eliminated. What happens to the church? And so what the communists ended up doing is that they would find these churches and they would shut them down, but then to break Christian community, they would, send them into other places across the country. What they were doing, though, is they were taking one fire and sending the embers all over the place. And then when it kind of opened back up early 90s. We come to find out the church has exploded. There might be more Christians in China today than anywhere else in the world.
There's probably more Christians in China than there are people in America.
There are people in America. That's
last I heard a few years ago, they were getting ready, before the big crackdowns, they're getting ready to send out 30 to 40,000 missionaries from China.
That's unbelievable. That's incredible. So in the presence, so what you're saying is in the presence of a really counterintuitive policy to alienate, spread out Christians, just causing them to duplicate more, a little persecution. We see this in the book of Acts, right? That's how fires spread. They then realize, wait, that didn't work. We have a Christian problem. So to address the Christian problem, that's when they began to ease certain restrictions, but in order to control it through the state church. Am I kind of summarizing that right?
But now they're going more. Xi Jinping has started seeing trying to take things back to the good old days is what he's trying to do. Right
Okay,
now.
explain that.
Hardline communism, full control, cracking down on everything.
So we hear about in the American media, churches being demolished. That's really happening. Like there is a concerted effort by the government to crack down on even just the state-sponsored church.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the underground church. Talk a little bit about that, because you have the state church, but let's discuss the...
So for a few years, really until the last 2 or 3 years, especially in the bigger cities, when I say underground churches, they just weren't state approved. So it went from a period of being really underground, they were hiding, running away from police, to the big cities like Beijing and Shanghai, to where you had huge mega churches popping up that weren't state controlled. And until recently, they were allowed to function as long as they weren't causing any problems. And that was the policy for a long time. And so probably for about 10 to 15 years, the policy was just, as long as you're not causing any problems, inciting riots and stuff like that, we'll ignore you.
But it's those churches that are now being crushed.
Yeah, and you see those in the news. There was one, I forgot where it was, but there was some in Beijing recently. They were big, really big, and they were completely shut down. I'm talking probably 50,000, 60,000 people would go to this church in Beijing, and it was completely shut down.
Now, when that happens, what takes place with those people? Because again, they're still Christians, they're still gonna assemble. Like being on the ground, seeing that happen, we get the news story, but we get like three paragraphs to an article. Like, what does that look like practically for the people that are involved with the minute or so that we have remaining?
Essentially, they go to the house church format where they break into smaller groups between 10 and 20 people, depending on how large the apartment or house they go to, and they separate and start teaching that way.
Now, what church were you involved with when you were there?
I was not involved necessarily with a Chinese church. I was,
because there's a third type of church, right?
Right. The international churches are generally legal. As long as you have a foreign passport, you can go in. And
so they do have, because there's so many foreigners living in China in all types of industries. You have international churches, but they're not open to Chinese nationals.
Correct.
That's fascinating. Well, we're going to continue this conversation and then also start to get into a little bit of archaeology when we come back. So if you're listening, hold tight. We've got more with Justin. Don't go anywhere with the Outlaw Radio Show. Right on. 11 minutes. I'll let you take a swig there. I want to talk about kind of the existence of kind of the surveillance state.
Yeah, just lead me.
Boom.
However you want.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I am joined by one of the most interesting people I know. His name's Justin. He's 35. He's got a degree in anthropology. Spent about 10 years as an archaeologist. got his degree in Israel, ended up traveling all over Asia, teaching English in China for about 5 years. Throughout a good portion of this, anytime he was back to the States, he would come to Calvary 316, which is how I got to know him. And just throughout the course of our friendship, just really inspired. Now, in China, there are really kind of three types of churches, and we were discussing this in the previous block. There is the state church, the state-allowed church for Chinese nationals, and this is run by the state. So it's sanctioned, it's approved, it's governmental controlled. There is also the underground church, which, as Justin was telling us, has been allowed to operate with a certain measure of freedom for many years, but that is rapidly changing. The state is taking more and more control over that. And those are often the churches, when you hear on the news of churches being demolished, pastors being arrested, things of that nature, it's those underground churches that are massive, have been allowed to operate, but that's being cracked down upon. Then there's the international churches, which have a footprint. You got to have a passport, an international passport to attend. This was the church that you attended.
Yeah, and it's been a real blessing to be in that aspect of things, because you start stripping away all the stuff that we get here in America that doesn't matter. When you're forced into an international setting where you have people from different cultures and countries, as well as denominations and styles of worship and stuff, and you have to strip down to what's Jesus matters and this matters, this not so much.
It's kind of like you got a bit of a glimpse into what heaven will be like.
Right. And so, we got everything from Calvinists to Armenians and people that love hymns to people that are like Hillsong kind of style worship kind of stuff. And you just have to be like, find the balance between those. And it's super interesting and pretty,
it's like a buffet of styles.
Right. But you find what matters in that. You don't get locked in.
When we were, anytime I corresponded with you while you were in China, it was mostly through Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Mm-hmm. It was the main mode of communication. And we would drop notes a couple times a year, just checking in. Mm-hmm. But you were always very specific that when asking about ministry, when asking about some of the other things that you were doing aside from just teaching English, that we had to kind of write in code, and had to be careful, not like even right now, why we're only using your first name and why your cell phone isn't in the room. Talk a little bit about that, because we hear this, like the big topic right now is TikTok.
Yeah.
All the kids are using TikTok, these little videos and whatnot. Joe Biden thinks it's a Tic Tac. Yeah. He has no idea what we're talking about. But TikTok, this app, is owned by Chinese companies.
Yeah.
And it's basically a massive surveillance mechanism.
Right. So, like, my phone is Chinese, and great phone, but all the apps I have on there that are Chinese and all this other stuff are based in China. And in China, any company that's above a certain level of employees has to have a representative of the Chinese Communist Party. And they're required by law to give up information if the government ever asks. So TikTok's owned by a Chinese company named ByteDance, which is based in China. Under Chinese law, if the Chinese government asks for it, they have to hand over information. And this could include Chinese citizens here or Chinese Americans here. If they're trying to threaten the families, there's lots of different instances of this happening.
So the concern over TikTok is legitimate. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Why were you concerned when it came to the correspondence that we had?
Mostly because what I was doing outside the context of the international church, I don't view myself as a missionary. Just because a lot of people here, they hear you live overseas, and they say, "Oh, you're a missionary." No, I'm an English teacher, and I'm a Christian, and I'm called to preach the gospel no matter where I go.
I'm on mission regardless.
Yeah, and so, but people have this, they elevate missionaries when they're around them, just to say they know missionaries. And oftentimes actual missionaries I know, they struggle to get financial support because all people want to do is say, I know a missionary.
Gotcha.
But
so you're very reluctant to even associate yourself at all with that
right.
particular
I'm not
title.
supported. I work over there. But ministry is very important to me, so I got involved in that pretty quickly.
So you were attending an international church, but you were involved in some other things as
right,
well.
which we weren't. Obviously, it's highly illegal. Because I was working with teens and like middle school, high school, youth group kind of stuff, teaching English using an ancient textbook and songs. 66 different ancient texts we used.
And 150 different songs.
Right. And so we use that to teach English and just kind of support the local church is the way I like to view it. Because I'm not Chinese. I barely speak Chinese. I love Chinese food, and that's about as relative as I could get to a lot of stuff. So, but I am a Christian, and when I meet other Christians, I can support them in some ways. But the bad thing is, as a foreigner, especially a big fat white guy in the middle of China, I
like
dwarf.
You're like 2 feet taller than everyone.
Yeah, I dwarf. I get a lot of pictures taken of me. A lot of times they mistake me for a WWE wrestler or something like that. But I will draw a lot of attention as a foreigner if I were working directly with the underground church, like going to the underground church and stuff like that. So,
which again is bad press.
Right. I don't want to cause more eyes on them because they already have it.
But you were involved in ministry outside of the international church, outside of your capacity as an English teacher. You were, let's just say you were shining your light and being a witness.
Yeah.
Can you kind of mentioned dealing with middle school age, high school age. Talk just broadly, is there a hunger for the gospel?
Yes.
Within that system?
Atheism, state-mandated atheism often just leaves a hole. So and you're seeing this in China where the state mandates to be a member of the Communist Party, and really to be rich, to gain much riches, you have to be a Communist Party member. But you're not allowed to be religious. You have to be atheist, or assign yourself to that.
So you got to renounce God.
Right. So you have this massive increase in Buddhism and Christianity and some of the other Taoism, all the older religions that were once there. A lot of people are going back to that.
So, and I think that this is an important point, and I just feel impressed to say this. So, in America, evangelicals in particular, we're all freaking out because we see politically this rise of socialism. And the truth, the AOC, this is communism. It's just rebranded and repackaged, and it's got a different bow on it, but it's the same general perspective of the world and how the world should be governed and run and what's equitable. And Christians are by and large kind of freaking out about the future of our country and what the implications would look like for the church, and our freedoms are going to be gone. What's inspiring is you spent 5 years in a country where everything we're afraid of is like fast forwarded and implemented to the 1000th degree.
I mean, there's hundreds of examples of, especially during the era of the Soviet Union, where the church expanded. I mean, you look at the Middle East, where thousands and thousands of people are coming to know Christ just because they're having dreams about Jesus. You hear stories and stories of that happening, and the church grows during times of
so
hardship.
Even if America adopted the full-blown Bernie Sanders crazy, it got bad, the church would probably flourish.
Probably. We're not citizens of this world.
Amen.
I mean, it's why do I have to, that's one thing I've
But you know the point I'm making.
Right. It would flourish. I mean, China's trying to send out 30 to 40,000 missionaries. They're wanting to send them out to the Middle East through China's Belt and Road Initiative, the new Silk Road. Places I can't go to because they look at me and oh, white guy, probably a Christian. Oh, Chinese person, they have money. And so a lot of them are learning Arabic and things like that.
We're running against a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit of archaeology. If you're listening on the radio and you missed the first part or you can't listen any longer, that's okay. Every episode of the Outlaw Radio Show is podcasted. The easiest way to find our podcast, which is available on Spotify, Google Play, as well as Apple Podcasting, is, again, our website, outlawradio.org. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right. Final block. Basically 9 minutes.
Did I go over on that one?
Oh, no. No, we were perfect. I'm a seasoned professional. Yeah. I've been doing this.
Well, I could see your eyes, so I was like,
I have to deal with Creighton, and Creighton's notorious for never looking at his clock. So,
okay.
Creighton.
I'm not.
Creighton's watching this.
I'm not a talker, but sometimes I am.
No, but this is great. Cool insight. Let's do it. Let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Outlaw Radio Show. I'm joined by a dear friend. His name's Justin, a very interesting individual. And on our show, I like to have guests that are interesting, that have stories. Justin has spent the last 5 years in communist China. We've talked extensively about what the church looks like there. Before we kind of wrap that up and then switch over to some archaeology, I do want just to get your perspective on this whole controversy. And it's kind of been bubbling up recently about the Uyghurs. Is that something that's commonly known within China?
It's been going on. I've known about it. It's been going on for 3 or 4 years now.
Explain what the Uyghurs, who the Uyghurs are, and what's happening.
So the Uyghurs come from a region bordering Turkey and Kazakhstan. That area, it used to be known as East Turkmenistan, I think, and then China took it over. And in the 50s, the Chinese Communist Party went in and took it, just like Tibet.
So this is the far western side.
Far western side, yeah. So under the guise of terrorism, which I'm not saying they don't have it there, but it'd be more like, I don't know. I don't think they have any claims to the area because the people are ethnic Turk, basically.
But they're Muslims.
They're Muslims, yeah.
So China took over an area.
They have great food. It's probably the best Chinese food you'll have.
Okay.
Side note.
Side note. So the Uyghurs are an ethnic group that are Muslim in an area that China assumed.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff coming out now. We just sanctioned a group from that area. It's mostly Han Chinese. And Han Chinese make up the majority ethnicity in China. And so basically they took over in the 50s and they just forced a lot of Han Chinese to move out there. Lots of crazy stuff. But aside from the concentration camps they have there, job training centers, they basically take them in, put them in the camps, and then they'll take like a Han Chinese man and force them to live in the home with the family. They make a Han Chinese person live in the live with a Uyghur family as a friendship, to build friendships. But they're basically just snitches, basically, is what they're supposed to do.
So these are re-education camps, concentration camps, labor camps.
Yeah, right.
And the idea is the re-indoctrinate. It's to strip them down of their ethnic identity, make them Chinese,
right,
and also remove them of their religious persuasion.
They're forcing them to drink alcohol. They're forcing them to eat pork. They're forcing them to speak Mandarin Chinese, not allowing them to speak
and to make Nike tennis shoes.
Right. Yeah.
I just wanted confirmation. So we're kind of new to this story, but that's existed for a while and people have been aware.
I'm glad it's coming out, but like I've been talking, me and my friends have known about it
for years.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk with the last few minutes that we have archaeology, because again, you spent how many years in Israel?
Just a year.
So you spent a year in Israel, but you were on a dig.
Yeah. So part of my master's degree, we had to do a project. So we.
What did you do? What was the project?
I mean, we were on Tel Azekah, which is basically near where David fought Goliath, essentially. Digging on a tell is basically a mound that's been built over time, where it used to be relatively flat, the city. Someone came in, conquered it, burned it down, covered it up, built the new things on top of that, and then over a couple thousand years, it gets as high as a hill.
So you have these mounds, but you dig into them, and
right.
You
start from the top,
things.
and you just keep going down till you get to the bedrock.
You stay pretty current. Just because, I mean, you have a degree in it. You wanted to do this. You said earlier, I want to dig holes for a living.
Right.
So this is not just an interest. This is a passion.
It was. I try and stay current and read stuff that's happening.
So just for our audience that finds these type of things, I think, interesting, what's happening right now that you're aware of in the archaeology world? Some cool things that are being discovered. We got about 4 minutes or so.
I mean, just on average, it's kind of funny. I'll see articles all the time in the news, and they say, "Oh, this confirms this." I'm like, "Yeah, everything does." And it's just that's part of the reason why I did it is because I'm a big fan of apologetics, and I always ask the question why, and I feel like a lot of Christians don't, because they feel like they're not supposed to, and so they just believe everything. That's why you get people that say, "Oh, Hebrew was the first language," or the original language, or dinosaurs never existed, that kind of stuff, and that's just because they don't do their own research.
How has archaeology strengthened your faith? Do you have a good example of that?
I mean, just you go to these places, especially just being in Israel, you go to the places and it goes like take for instance the Valley of Megiddo or Armageddon.
Valley of Megiddo.
Yeah, Valley of Megiddo. You start looking at it, and like in your mind, if you've never been there, you just view this wide open space, and you get there, and it's fairly narrow valley. I mean, it's not that big. So it goes from imagining all of the armies gathering there, and you're like, I can't even imagine how big that is, to where all of them being in a smaller space.
Conceptually, I think when I went to Israel, one of the most enlightening parts, and I think you and I have actually talked about this, that one of your favorite places is the Galilee.
Oh yeah, man, I love the Galilee.
It's beautiful, but like the first thing that strikes you is how small it is.
Right. Yeah.
Like you're standing on the shore there at Capernaum.
Right.
The Capernaum.
Right.
And you can like look across to the right, to the left. It's 7 miles by 14 miles. You can see it.
Right. And so when you hear stories about the storms that go there, and there are big storms there, but they're not going to be big enough to where these fishermen should have been afraid, or that afraid of dying in the middle of that lake. It's smaller than Lake Lanier.
Which Lake Lanier is a lake here in Georgia that's a reservoir. To me, when you read about Jesus's ministry, his Galilean ministry, again, it all makes so much more sense. Where you have Nazareth going, back towards the Mediterranean, down the Valley of the Doves,
right?
And how he would have popped out at Capernaum, made Capernaum his headquarters, and his ministry from Tiberias across the sea to Bethsaida.
Right.
Have you heard about some of the digs in Bethsaida?
Yeah, so they've started digging in, finding like some of the old churches and temples and stuff
that date back way far.
Yeah. And they've actually found some stuff in the lake, or Sea of Galilee. They found some
the Lake of Gennesaret.
Yeah. And so when you're in Israel, you call it the lake, because that's what it is. So it's very interesting to see. I guess for me as an archaeologist, it's a Christian archaeologist. It's a confirmation every time, but it's not surprising.
Right.
It's just kind of like, yeah, duh.
I was always told when you go to Israel, your Bible becomes a pop-up book.
Right.
And I never really understood that till you go.
Yeah.
And your Bible really does. It's amazing.
Like constant one after another. the Bible's always being confirmed. So just more and more, it's just kind of like, yeah, that's bound to happen.
Justin, thanks so much for being on the Outlaw Radio Show.
That was a pleasure, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you've been listening again to the Outlaw Radio Show. If you liked what you heard, I encourage you to do a few things. First, contact your local Christian radio station. This ministry, it's a labor of love. These Christian radio stations are not in it to make money. It's really a ministry. It's a seed-sowing ministry. And thank them for existing, what they do. And also, if you wouldn't mind, thank them for carrying Outlaw Radio in your community. Second thing is check out our website, outlawradio.org. From the site, you can access our podcast, which is available on Spotify, Google, as well as Apple Podcasting. You can listen to this episode in its entirety or all previous episodes. If you'd like to see what I look like and what Justin looks like, you can also check out our YouTube channel, which is outlawradio.live. Again, outlawradio.live. You find us on Twitter, visit us on Facebook. info@outlawradio is our email address. Once again, my name is Zach Adams, and I hope you join me this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show. There we go, man.
All right.
How was it?
Yeah.
It flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So we're actually still rolling.
Oh, okay.
And anything just to the church folk or anybody else that
I mean, I could just I don't like I don't like talking about myself unless somebody asks me about something.
And so this was a challenge because I'm asking about you.
Right.
I'm telling you, Calvary 316ers, when you see Justin at church, talk to him about China, talk to him about archaeology. Got some pretty cool stuff. Talk to him about food. Again, going back to the food truck warehouse. Top 4 ethnic foods.
Oh, okay. This is pretty easy. I love Israeli food, Middle Eastern food, I guess you could say.
Okay, Middle Eastern food is one.
No, I'd say probably Mexican food is number one.
Mexican food.
Yeah. As an American, when you live overseas, you always crave Mexican food.
There you have it. So number one, Mexican food.
Mexican food, and then I'd probably say like Southern American food.
There
like
you
either
go.
Barbecue or home
There
cooking.
you go. Southern American food.
And that might be that's a toss up between number one and number two. Mexican
Understandably.
home
So number
food.
2.
And then I'd probably say Middle Eastern food.
All right, number
and then
3.
Maybe Ethiopian food.
Ethiopian food.
Yeah.
Now explain Ethiopian. Why Ethiopian food?
Have you ever had Ethiopian
I haven't,
food?
no.
Oh man, it's the best. I'll take you. There's some places
Close by?
Yeah. It's so they use this.
Is it a lot of goat? I don't like goat.
No. So they got a lot of stewed meat, and then they have this spongy sour bread that you just kind of scoop the stew up with.
See, that's a combination of things I like: stew, meat, and bread.
Right.
As you can tell,
it's good. Chinese food, like actual.
So it's a lot of soaking stuff up and eating it with good spice.
Yeah.
Ethiopian food.
Ethiopian food, yeah. And then some actual Chinese food is.
So when you say actual Chinese food, you mean Panda Express?
They have aspects of it. I did eat, this past time. I did eat the original General Tso chicken.
Explain what that is.
General Tso chicken.
Yes.
It's
just for the audience.
It's the most popular Chinese dish in America.
Okay, in America. So you say you had the original.
Okay, so
what does that mean?
I don't want to give it away fully, but there is a documentary called "The Search for General Tso." I highly recommend it. It goes through they look for the origin of this dish, and it kind of goes through the history of the Chinese people in America, which is really, really interesting. But anyway, if you want to get it, you need to go to Taipei, Taiwan, Mr. Peng's restaurant.
That's the joint.
Yeah, and get it. It is pretty good.
Well, we are. Let's see. It's we got a Braves game that we're gonna watch here in a few minutes, and so we're gonna go ahead and tap out. Thank you for watching, Justin. Thanks for being with me.
Yeah.
God bless. See you guys.